Former President Jacob Zuma is now challenging a High Court ruling declaring his release on parole unlawful. Now, Zuma served less than 2 months of his 15-month contempt of court sentence, and the Helen Suzman Foundation, AfriForum, as well as the DA wants the parole decision to be set aside. eNCA senior reporter Aviwe Mtila joins us now from Bloemfontein. Good morning to you, Aviwe. And let's start with what's expected, of course, in court regarding this case.
Good morning, Tumelo, and the spotlight, of course, will be at the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein today, where the stakes will be high for former President Jacob Zuma. If that December ruling by the North Gauteng High Court is upheld, it could see the former president spend the rest of his 15-month sentence behind bars. That's an additional 13 months, given that he already served 2 months. Remember, former president handing himself over in July last year, 2021, but a few days later he fell ill, where he was hospitalized for that 2 months. We do understand that he was then released on medical parole. That's against the advice of the medical parole advisory body, who said that the president was fit and could serve the rest of the sentence there. But of course, the Correctional Services National Commissioner, Arthur Fraser, released him nonetheless against this advice. And then we saw the Democratic Alliance, as well as the Helen Suzman Foundation and AfriForum, head then to the High Court to challenge this medical parole release. Of course, in December, that was overturned, and after that review, the court itself said that that decision was irrational and illegal, and basically said that the president should then serve the remainder of his sentence. Now, former President Jacob Zuma is appealing that decision. Hence, we're at the Supreme Court of Appeal, where, of course, we're expecting that ruling and the outcome of that to be determined today.
Yeah. And of course, we spoke about AfriForum making that application, but we know that the DA, as well as Helen Suzman Foundation, also joining in, to AfriForum's application. Just give us some context as to how they now also got about, because I see here that DA leader John Steenhuisen making mention that the spokesperson of the party would also be attending, this court appearance to ensure that the rule of law is applied to everyone, irrespective of your political connections.
Roy Jacobson, that's the DA leader in Bloemfontein, is expected to be in court, as they say that they want to ensure that the rule of law is upheld. Remember that the DA is arguing that, in fact, everyone mustn't, the former president received favourable treatment given his political standing. We might also see even the former president himself, Jacob Zuma, in court, judging by what we saw even in the tweet from the Jacob Zuma Foundation that suggested that he might be attending, given this icy Mangawung weather and it permitting. But of course, stakes are high for the former president, as of course he could face another 13 months behind bars if the decision is not overturned and is upheld by the Supreme Court of Appeal. Given that he still has other avenues, if he could take it to the Constitutional Court, the very court, in fact, that held him in contempt of court for not attending the state capture inquiry. Remember when the president didn't attend those sessions there. So he was sentenced to 15 months by the Constitutional Court, and of course now he's trying to appeal that medical parole decision that was taken, in fact, in December by the High Court in Pretoria.
Yeah, I want us to take it back a bit here, if we may, colleague, and just include Arthur Fraser into the equation and the role that he played, as the Correctional Services National Commissioner at the time, in taking that decision to release Jacob Zuma as the former president. I mean, that wasn't a popular decision publicly, but of course that decision was taken. How does he then come into the equation?
Wasn't a popular decision at all, given that the former president only spent 2 months behind bars. But you'd remember that after handing himself over in July 2021, he then fell ill and was hospitalized for the majority of that 2 months. Then it was 2 months later where Arthur Fraser comes in as the Correctional Services National Commissioner, releasing former President Jacob Zuma on medical parole. This decision, in fact, was not advised by the medical parole advisory body, which suggested that the former president was fit and could serve the remaining 13 months behind bars. But of course, Arthur Fraser nonetheless released him anyway on medical parole. Hence then, that's where the of the Correctional Services National Commissioner, Arthur Fraser Cummins. That's, of course, why the Democratic Alliance, the Helen Suzman Foundation, as well as AfriForum, then headed to the High Court to have that decision overturned. And, of course, it was overturned then at the High Court, where the High Court said that decision was irrational and illegal in itself. So now we're at the Supreme Court of Appeals, where the former president himself is taking that decision upon appeal, saying that it should be looked into. It's a matter that should be looked into because he did deserve medical parole. In fact, that tweet suggested that his medical team will also be in court there, given that the IC Weda Imanga Wong permits him to be there in person.
All right, we'll leave it there. And of course, we'll be looking out on other developments. And surely, of course, eNCA senior reporter Aviwe Mtila will be standing by to give us any updates around this court case today.